All right, good morning again. We'll get started today. We're really excited to have everyone here on today's webinar with us. And we do have a lot to cover over the next hour. This webinar is titled Developing Residential Storage in 2020, the breakout year for storage with SolarEdge and LG Chem. To give you a little background on this webinar topic, in December, we released our integration with SolarEdge, which now enables our users to run residential storage simulations and savings analysis, which are representative of how StorEdge, coupled with an LG RESU10H battery, would operate in the field. So this is our first residential storage integration that's available on the platform. And it comes at a time where residential storage is becoming a real part of conversations and deployments are really growing, which we've seen a lot of this past year. There's a variety of factors that are playing into how the market got to where it is today, how it's going to fare in the future, particularly within the next 12 or so months. So before we jump into all of that, I want to introduce our panelists today. We do have an awesome group on with us, all who have had big parts in getting our integration live and for you guys to use. We are joined by Cameron Stewart, the applications engineer for SolarEdge, Lynn Tran, the director of sales for residential energy storage systems with LG Chem, and Adam Gerza, the COO of Energy Toolbase. My name is Tracy, and I'm going to be moderating the webinar as we go along. At the end of this webinar, we always do our Q&A at that time. So if you have a question, you can type it into the chat box, and we are going to be going through them at the end. If we don't get to them, we will contact you via email after the webinar is over to get those answers to you. We are going to also be sending out the recording of this webinar to everybody that registered, whether they were here or not. So before we take a closer look at what's next for storage in 2020, we do want to take a quick look back at 2019. As we know from the past, the market and developers have faced numerous challenges in the growth of energy storage throughout the country, not just residential, but commercial as well. Some of those being the price of batteries, which we know are getting significantly cheaper, financials not penciling out with storage, along with rate schedules that weren't necessarily favorable to storage. Another big challenge for selling storage, especially residential, is the fact that it does slow down the sales cycle. Storage definitely increases the complexity of the sale, no doubt, meaning developers aren't closing sales as quickly. So this past year was a record-breaking year for the storage market as a whole, and it's been a major turning point for behind-the-meter growth. Residential systems are becoming bigger conversations amid the want for backup power, especially with the PG&E shutoffs, which affected millions of people throughout the year. Overall, general interest in storage across the country, not just in California, ticked up after the shutoffs became national news. A few other things that have contributed to this growth are lucrative state incentives, the ITC step down, to name a few. So residential storage, again, reached more people in the past 12 months than ever before, growing 3% quarter over quarter and 8% year over year in 2019. Wood Mackenzie has published its Q4 energy storage report, saying that the market deployed more than 264 megawatt hours of storage in Q3, with behind-the-meter projects accounting for about 55% of that market. So that follows a record-setting Q2 where 83% of those deployments were from residential and non-residential projects. To no one's surprise, California led in Q3, as you can see, with Hawaii coming close behind, and then Arizona. Today, we do have 13 states, along with 200 more cities, that have committed to 100% clean energy target, which is another contributor to the promising growth that we are expected to see in 2020 and in the next couple years. So again, heading into 2020, storage will be working its way into a lot more sales conversations. We are predicting, as the market is expected to grow, that this is kind of a stat that we can't shake that we did read, but the report is predicting 1 in 5 residential storage systems will be paired with batteries in 2020 in California. That is a huge number, and with the recent approval of NEM paired storage, a solar mandate on all new construction homes, and a lot more S-chip budget reallocations. This does seem like a number that could very well come to fruition, and we're really excited about that possibility. We are also seeing a lot more storage-friendly rates, especially in California's IOUs, where the new TOU rates are improving the financial picture overall for storage and making have it make a little bit more sense. Cameron is going to be touching on a couple more stats ahead, but looking over the next 5 years, the same report suggests that the US storage market is going to grow 12 times from 2019 to 2024. Behind the meter deployments will be driven primarily by residential installations, which is encouraging throughout that same time period. And by 2024, energy storage is expected to be a $5 billion industry. So the 2019 versus 2020 numbers for total market growth is expected to be large. And you can see that it's expected to almost double in both gigawatt terms and dollars. So we did mention S-chip today. We can talk quickly about it. 2020 is going to be a big year for this program, no doubt. A number of changes are coming to the program in the next few months. You do probably know California regulators have proposed allocating more than $600 million for the flagship equity and resiliency budget. This is going to support families in fire zones and low-income communities. SB 700, of course, extended the program to 2025, adding that additional $800 million for behind-the-meter projects. And in 2020, advocates are pushing for, again, more money to be allocated to residential projects. We did pull the latest S-chip incentive tracker status as of this morning. This is something we mention a lot on our webinars. The current allotment, as you can see, is virtually gone. All of the IOUs on this are on a wait list in step 5. The money for these projects was pretty much gone within weeks of opening. We didn't include the commercial allotments, but if you go back and look, there is still millions of dollars left for commercial projects that isn't being used. Again, the good news for residential developers is that it should get replenished very soon. So with all that said, we again are very excited about our integration with SolarEdge, one of the industry leaders in the residential storage space and the first publicly available residential storage integration to go live on the platform. This industry is going to help developers streamline their project workflow and just give them confidence in running those validated simulations. So with that, I am going to pass things over to Cameron from the SolarEdge team, and I will share your screen with you.
Great. There he is. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Really appreciate being here and a part of this presentation. Again, my name is Cameron Stewart. I'm an applications engineer here at SolarEdge, and I've been in the solar industry for almost 16 years now, with SolarEdge for 5.5 of those years. So very excited to be on the forefront of technology. I focus mainly on residential storage and storage applications. So just a little bit about SolarEdge. We are a huge company now. We're over the $1 billion mark, which is pretty amazing. I've just, this huge growth. So we have 13.1 gigawatts of systems shipped worldwide, over 40 million optimizers, almost 2 million inverters. We're a company of engineers. We have 303 awarded patents with an additional 240 patent applications. We're always innovating, always striving to be better than what we are today. And hopefully you see that as well. Why storage? Why are we talking about storage? Why was it, to the slides previously, why is the industry changing so much? So one of the things that SolarEdge has noticed that the cost for solar is declining, right? So for installers, this means price declines continue to decrease your average selling price, and with soft costs really staying the same, and product costs dropping like that, we have to increase our margins somewhere. So where are we able to increase our margins? Client acquisition costs continue to increase. So more revenue growth options are needed in order to stay competitive. So if you're trying to grow your business, historically, we would rise with the tide and say, I'm going to grow my business by selling more. And selling more is always great, but if there's not an option to sell more, how do we grow our business? How do we improve? Well, storage is a growing market. So one way to rise with the tide is start competing in a new market, whether it's EV charging or in this case, storage applications, which is what we're talking about today. That is a growth market. So that's something you definitely want to start participating in so you can take advantage of that growth market. Storage right now is a market leader for SolarEdge. We have, we're a global company. We're present in over 28 countries with like boots on the ground in 28 countries. Our product has been installed in over 130 countries. Australia is a big proponent and user of batteries and LG Chem and StorEdge, but in the global footprint, North America and the United States is the single largest residential storage market from our count. We have about roughly 40% of our installations here, and of that 40%, 55% of those are in California. So California is the largest market that we see. Hawaii is about 20% of our market, Arizona, Puerto Rico, Florida, and then an honorable mention for Massachusetts and Rhode Island. They've recently implemented new smart business programs or smart program, which gives you a battery incentive for the utility to be able to control the battery discharge. And we do expect those to maybe pass Florida and Puerto Rico. And sometimes I do have to remind people, yes, Puerto Rico is part of the US. And then also an interesting number about this is 24% of our installations have multiple batteries. So 2 batteries, mostly in Hawaii because of net zero export. If you were to look at Hawaii, I think 60 to 80% of those installations have 2 batteries, where California, it's usually 1 battery. So let's talk about StorEdge and why people buy it, because I think that's an interesting avenue. We all know that when the grid goes down, a standard solar inverter is going to disconnect from the grid. We have to. It's part of the UL requirements called anti-islanding. So we have to disconnect from the grid, and usually that's done by shutting off. So when you ask somebody, why are you looking at storage? It's, well, I want to stay on. I want my home powered when the grid goes down. And with these increasing shutoffs that like PG&E is doing for fire safety, I mean, they're very important, and I understand why we're doing them, but I want my beer to stay cold. I want my refrigerator on. I want to be able to watch Netflix and live my life the way I need to live my life. Charge my cell phone was a big one for a lot of people at my office, but we want basically resiliency. So that's the #1 reason why people will buy a battery, is for resiliency. They want to be able to do the things that they want to do when the grid is down. Now, how do they justify the cost of resiliency? Because resiliency is never going to pay itself off. So now we have to talk to our customers about, okay, well, let's lessen the cost of this resiliency that you really want, because that's an emotional investment. Let's talk about dollars. So where that comes into play is, and what Energy Toolbase can offer you is modeling that shows what would happen during a time of use rate. So this is basically self-consumption, and we want to shift our excess energy from noontime, our excess energy production, and we want to shift that to the evening to cover those on-peak charges, okay? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to take all that excess energy, store it in a battery, and then use that excess energy later at night. So with StorEdge, and if you buy our product, StorEdge, we have a couple of examples and 4 main reasons why we're more competitive and more dominant in the market. The first biggest one is we just generate more energy because of our architecture. We talked about installations and selling, and basically installations are also a difficult part of installing batteries, but SolarEdge made it super simple with LG Chem, very easy to install. It's very safe is always another big factor, like how safe is this battery? I watch the news every day. How safe is it? So our battery is, with work and LG, our battery is very safe, and then fully visible. So let's talk about how we get more energy. So first, our system is DC coupled. So what that means is it shares the same DC bus of the solar array. So we can charge LG Chem's battery at a very high efficiency. And then when we use that battery, then we only invert it once to AC. So DC coupling is much more energy efficient, which is why we like it, versus if we were to look at what we would call round trip efficiency, and that would be from solar energy DC to battery DC, and then to use that energy AC, that would be your round trip efficiency, and that's around 90%. If you look at AC coupling, and AC coupling Basically, it's just a different architecture. They both have their strengths and they both have their weaknesses. But the big weakness for AC coupling is just the efficiency, the round trip efficiency. It's around 80%. Safety is near and dear to my heart. We always want to make sure we have the safest products on the market. We comply with National Electrical Code 2017, which talks about photovoltaic rapid shutdown system. That's what PAVRSS stands for. And basically, we need to control our rooftop voltage to less than 30 volts within 30 seconds of initiation of a rapid shutdown device. We have our products do that inherently because of the design, but we also thought about the battery. We want to be able to shut down the battery if something is happening. We want a firefighter to be able to turn off one switch and shut down the entire system. So, of course, StorEdge and LG Chem, we do that. We comply with those. Full visibility, we want to be able to monitor our battery, see what's happening. So you use our monitoring portal. We have smartphone applications that you can use. You can use your computer, whatever you want. You can see how the battery is behaving, if the grid is on or off, is it charging, is it discharging. You can see your load profile. So I'm pretty sure Adam's going to go through like green button data and all the amazing things that Energy Toolbase can offer you. And then you can compare that to real-time data of what's happening at your house. So we upload data with our new cell plans. We upload data every 5 minutes, and you get 15-minute interval data. But we're uploading data basically every 5 minutes. So the components that you need to make all this work is basically your inverter. This is called a StorEdge inverter, and it just has a big DC disconnect with a whole bunch of battery integration stuff inside of it. We need our SolarEdge electricity meter. This is a consumption meter that measures energy coming and going from the house. And then for backup capability, you need the auto transformer. And then, of course, let's not forget the LG Chem battery. It's a 9.8 kilowatt hour battery that Lynn will get into the details on. But that's it, 4 components. Like previously, we install the inverter and some solar. Now we have like 3 other components, but that's it. So it's super easy to install, fewer boxes on the wall. And then lastly, if you need help with your installations or your SGIP applications or whatever, just reach out to us. We have learning labs on Vimeo that you can see how to install a battery, how to program a battery. We have installation videos on YouTube. We have installation guides. All these things are available to you for free. Just reach out. We're happy to help you. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And then I'm going to pass it over to Lynn, and she's going to do a presentation. But thank you again. I know I was talking really fast, but I had a limited amount of time, so I didn't want to take up the whole hour.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you very much. And everyone, my name is Lynn Tran. I'm with LG Chem. Thank you for having me here. And very happy to explain a little bit about LG and why home batteries are selling and why the SolarEdge RESU solution specifically has been getting out there on the market and being the right solution for customers. Okay. So LG, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who didn't know who LG was, but the LG that we're thinking is the LG Group. It's a $145 billion global company made up of 3 different companies: LG Electronics, LG Chem, and also a TCOM company. LGE is the company that you're all thinking about, and it's the company that your homeowners all think about. It's a household name that homeowners know and trust. LG Chem is a chemical company and actually is what LG was originally founded on. LG started out as Lucky Chemical, a chemical company, a very long-standing chemical company. And if you see any LG battery out there, it's actually coming from LG Chem. These batteries, LG Chem makes the batteries for consumer electronics, for the stationary storage market, for electric vehicles. And because of the large presence we have with electric vehicles, we can now safely adopt that technology to home batteries. Typically, as consumers, we don't buy anything based on the battery. We've never bought a cell phone or a laptop or even a car based on the type of lithium technology, not yet. So there's never a reason to market LG Chem but LG Chem is actually a major supplier for lithium batteries for electric vehicle markets and is already in all of our homes. So it's very important to know that there is an LG Chem group within the big LG company that we all know and think of, that typically is just the dishwashers and the refrigerators. Okay. Next slide. So LG Chem is a $26 billion global company making lithium technologies for many different technology applications. The battery technology that you see from LG, again, is actually LG Chem, and we develop all of our own technology, all of our own IP, and it's all done under our own manufacturing roof. So we have the experience, the expertise, and the reputation, all with the LG name, with all the now specifics of making a home battery product like any other product you would expect coming from LG, just another product, another home appliance from LG for your home. But again, it's very important that homeowners know that it's the chemical side of LG that's making the product, not LG Electronics with the appliances. Some brand names that your homeowners should know, because otherwise, again, we don't buy anything based on the battery. Apple, Lenovo, even LG Electronics, they're our customer for lithium battery products. Homeowners should know that we make lots of different types of batteries for lots of different applications. And it's all about finding what battery fits the best application. And the applications that are why home batteries are selling is really where SolarEdge comes into play. So next slide. Why are people buying home batteries? First of all, I always tell salespeople, make sure that homeowners are aware that if the grid goes out in the middle of the night, that the solar system's not going to turn on the next day. This is why SolarEdge technology has a dark start function and can actually, for specifically this purpose. So the reasons why people are buying home batteries are, one, to protect your home, to be prepared for emergency preparedness, also for saving money. Anytime you can save energy from using from the utility, that's less cost, and also gaining independence from the utility grid. And so what I tell folks to ask homeowners, and what homeowners should be asking themselves, is what are you going to do? What are you going to do when things go wrong? How are you going to protect your home? What options do you have? And has your bill ever gone up? Do you think your utilities are going to continue to go up, your utility expenses? And jumping to this slide, what are you going to do when things go wrong? Ask your homeowners to ask homeowners, what are you going to reach for first? And what they're going to be doing is essentially filling up a backup panel that SolarEdge can have the smarts to be programmed to automatically back up when the grid goes out. So having a dedicated panel allows you to power your essential loads efficiently. You don't want to waste your very expensive lithium power, and SolarEdge knows how to control the battery to do so via that critical or the backup panel. So asking your homeowners what they need first is a very important step of literally filling in what circuits to put that backup panel on. Next slide. Another way for the SolarEdge inverter to be programmed is for energy savings on the time of use. This is when homeowners can realize that their energy rates are always increasing, and basically when the sun goes down, the rates go up, and a battery can help mitigate that expensive time. And again, via the energy Toolbase analysis and modeling, and importantly through the SolarEdge programming, you're able to do the two main applications for why home batteries have been selling today. Okay, and with that, I'll just pass it over to Tracy.
All right, thank you, Lynn. Adam, I will share your screen with you so you can take over. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Cameron. Hey, everybody, this is Adam with Energy Toolbase. Let me do my screen share and I'll get going here. Maybe Tracy, you can give me a quick check that I'm
Looks good.
awesome, coming in good on audio and visual. Yeah, so as Tracy already said at the top, we are incredibly excited for this integration to go live. This is officially our first publicly available residential storage integration to go live on the platform. So this is a really big deal for us, and we are honored to be working with two industry-leading names in both SolarEdge and LG. And also just kind of a further shout out on both Cameron and Lynn. I think of these two as probably two of the foremost residential storage experts in the country. I know they're both road warriors kind of on the conference circuit, presentations, panels, talking about storage all over the country. So again, really happy to have them both on. Okay, well, during my segment, I'm going to cover a few things, starting with just demoing how to sign up for the integration. And that's going to be all of about 30 seconds because it's really quick and easy to do. And then really the meat of my presentation is going to be running through some different case study projects using the integration and looking at some cases where residential storage, you know, the StorEdge plus the RESU10H LG battery makes very strong economic sense. And then lastly, just as a teaser, we're going to talk about a really hot current topic that actually there was just some news on yesterday with regards to NEM paired storage, which if this issue isn't already on your radar, it should be. Okay, so let me start with sign up. I am in a demo account. It's really straightforward. I think anybody that already knows our application probably knows how to do this. You're just going to jump right into step 5, our energy storage step. And initially, these integration logos are grayed out. And it's as easy as clicking on this and effectively applying to use this service. Now, one thing that makes this integration a little bit unique is we are instantaneously approving applications within 1 business day. So there's really, frankly, no waiting, and this is open to everyone, which is a little bit different from the path that some of these other storage vendors have chosen to take, where they're kind of working closer with dealer partners and kind of have requirements in order to use the integration. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory, I think. From there, I would like to jump into the case studies. And in the process here, I'm also going to touch on a few of the things that make this integration unique. There's actually 3 separate items that the SolarEdge integration is different from all the other integrations that are live on our site. So I am going to start with a PG&E residential project that I've got set up. And I've already got a solar system built in here just to kind of give some context. We've got an 80% solar system. And then I'm going to kind of go in from here and add an LG StorEdge storage system in step 5. Just to give a little further context in terms of the rates we're using in PG&E, everything we're modeling on is the current rates. In some cases, in case the EV2, 15 days old, this is the January 1, 2020 effective rate. And this is a very common rate switch right now in the PG&E territory. The customer is currently on the ETOUA rate schedule, which is the now default residential rate schedule that PG&E is moving customers onto. And we're going to be moving them over to the EV2 rate, which is a really advantageous rate for storage economics, as we're going to see in a second here. So that's kind of the context on the rate switch we're going to be modeling. Let's jump into step 5 and run our first case study here. So we only have one option in terms of the design. And again, if it is the StorEdge 7600A-US coupled with that LG RESU10H product. So one thing I wanted to point out, this is an external inverter system. And that's important because we're going to ask you to independently define the number of batteries you're speccing and the inverter. It was actually, it jumped out at me during Cameron's segment of the presentation where he said, I think he said over 25% of their volumes right now are 2 battery or greater systems. That was actually a bit surprising to me. And we're set up to run those really well. During my Hawaii case study, I'm actually going to show you exactly where one of those would make sense. For the PG&E run initially here, let me just do a 1 and a 1. and we're going to choose the charge from PV only. I'm going to unpack some of those other control settings in a minute. As I hope everybody on the line already knows, in terms of like defining the default system cost, we ask you to manage that yourself, and that's all done via your company settings. So if that's a feature that you like to use and kind of have defaulted pricing, by all means, go and set that up. Of course, you can kind of overwrite what that total turnkey installed cost is right there in the box. Okay, so here's one of the items that really makes this integration unique when I run this simulation. And some folks actually may be seeing this for the first time, and it's this screen right here. Effectively, what this is here is really purposefully built and really specifically built for the StorEdge product. So I'm going to bring up another document on my screen, which is this here. So this is a data sheet that SolarEdge makes available that documents the profile programming modes of operation by which you can program your StorEdge inverter. There's basically 7 different modes of operation where effectively they're looking for you to define how you want the StorEdge to operate throughout the year. So back on this screen here, maybe I'll attempt to go split screen. What this is a really powerful goal-seeking optimization where we're determining the optimal modes of operation for you to program the StorEdge. And this is very, very highly specific to your project, right? So very specific to the load profile that you've created, the energy use profile. Also, of course, the rate schedules that we're modeling on. In this case, it's we're rate switching to that PG&E EV2 rate. And then, of course, also if you're coupling with solar or not. But a really very powerful feature. And basically what this amounts to is we're telling you, and we're very confident in saying that this schedule of operations, we kind of refer to this internally as our fixed schedule. This is the most optimal way to program your StorEdge specific to your project. Okay, so we're going to unpack this more in a minute. So that's the schedule, and then effectively our simulation engine runs it over that 365-day period. And I know a lot of folks are used to kind of interpreting this summary view here and kind of looking at how many cycles were run throughout the year. And then, of course, what a lot of folks really think of Energy Toolbase as is they want to know how much did that storage system just save for this specific customer. And of course, there we're expressing it in dollars per kilowatt hour. So this basically amounts to about $520. And let's just jump in and unpack a little bit what happened in the demand profile visualization screen. So let me just filter down to the EV2 rate. And why don't I just zoom in on a few days here in January. You can see on the bottom of the screen, we're looking at January 8th through 12th. And all 5 days look pretty consistent on what's happening here. So just kind of following my mouse, here we are on the morning of January 9th. The red number, 15%, that's a really important number. That represents state of charge of the LG battery. By the way, as a side note, it is configured in Energy Toolbase based on the recommendations of Cameron and the product application engineering team to be defaulting at an 85% max depth of discharge. So effectively what that means is 15% is all the way empty because we have an 85% DOD. Okay, so here's the simulation of dispatch on just one day. Pretty straightforward what's happening here. You can see on the bottom of the screen, notice this is the EV2 rate. This is all off-peak energy priced at 16.9 cents. So we are charging, we are filling the tank, we are charging the battery all in the off-peak period at 17 cents. And then you could probably already guess what's going to happen once we get into the 4 o'clock hour, which is when the on-peak period hits, 4 to 9. And you can see down here, it's a 35.5 cent on-peak time of use rate. We're discharging back. So we're going from 100% state of charge. And on this particular day, it looks like we were able to fully dump, go from 100 down to empty, 15% state of charge. And that's this 5-day period. Effectively, when we run this simulation, we're performing this over a 365-day period. And of course, this is highly, highly specific to the load profile of the customer. You'll probably recognize this load profile just by kind of like looking at the consistency throughout the whole month of January here. This is one of those quote unquote typical residential NREL load profiles that I chose to run with here. We're going to look at actually an example in a minute of my actual house where I downloaded my real data. So that's really kind of how the fixed schedule, which we output, and then you can see the back end dispatch model, and that is really what's driving the savings value that a lot of folks are really looking to Energy Toolbase to solve. And then maybe before going on to the next case study, let me just kind of close the loop and go into a finished document template. As a lot of folks know, we have document templates in our gallery. In our next release, we're really excited to be releasing some new ones that we've been in development on. You know, as both Cameron and Lynn mentioned earlier, right now for residential storage, and certainly looking backwards over last year, you know, a lot of times the primary customer motivation for residential storage is not necessarily economics. You know, obviously the backup power motivator is very important, folks that want to be more energy independent. So we just kind of want to plant the seed that as you are selling this, let's say solar plus StorEdge LG system at the kitchen table, you can certainly create document templates that really, you know, highlight the different value propositions. And again, as everybody knows, Energy Toolbase is really good at determining exactly what sort of savings we achieved in terms of avoided cost, right? How much utility bill we can reduce as a result of adding storage. We fully acknowledge the fact that it's not just about savings and economics, as both Cameron and Lynn talked about. Very likely, you're probably talking about, you know, the combination of factors that, you know, that makes it great, from the backup benefit to being more energy independent, and then of course, certainly also talking about the savings that it offers. So that's just kind of closing the loop here. These are all actually very, very real market numbers that I used to run this initial run here. And if you ask me, I think that's pretty compelling, coming in at a about a 7-year payback, 13%, 25-year IRR. And this also does bake in a replacement of both the inverter and battery happening in year 15 in the cash flow model. Okay, so that's one, and I hope that starts to kind of just show in action the integration. Let's jump into another. I'm going to skip over now and kind of switch gears, and let's kind of let's just move out to Hawaii. And the Hawaii example is actually going to be very, very similar to the Australia example. Okay, because the value proposition there, the way storage makes money, residential storage makes money, it's different. It's really driven more so by self-consumption. Okay, so just to give context on the setup here, this is all, by the way, real world data. Again, most recent effective date rates. We're in the HECO, Hawaii Electric Company territory. We're going to do a rate schedule R, that's the default residential rate in Hawaii. Rate switch to the TOUR schedule. But the really key piece of the puzzle here for the Hawaii run is this, and Cameron actually mentioned this in his segment. It's the fact that if you have solar on a residential house in Hawaii and you export back to grid, depending on which net metering tariff you connect to, you don't get value for those exports. So this is the extreme case. This is the customer self-supply tariff, where basically you get nothing if your solar exports to grid. And just to kind of give some context for the run I set up here, again, I use PV watts on the solar production side. Again, I think using really reasonable 12,000 kilowatt hours on annual usage for the customer. We got a 7 kW DC rated solar system producing about 11,000 kilowatt hours of solar. 91% offset. Okay, so this is a pretty full offset system. The key number that I want you to key in on over here, and the one that really matters, is in the bottom right. 51% of that solar production is getting exported to grid. Okay, so let's just look at that visually real quick. And I know folks already know what this looks like. So again, we have our load data. We've overlaid our solar production data. And as you all know, whatever your solar production modeling tool of choice is, Energy Toolbase, we're easily interoperable with all tools. But you can just see all those exports. That's all the light blue, production below the line. And that's just an instance where you're simply producing more solar than you're using at that given interval. And again, when you run the whole 365-day simulation for this case study, and this is not extreme at all. I'd almost call this a base case. I've seen cases where it's much larger than this. But about half of that production is going back to grid. And in Hawaii, you would be getting killed here because the way we set that at half the production would be getting valued at 0. Okay, so that's the setup. Now let's jump in and add our StorEdge LG system. And I'm going to do it the same way as before. Let's start with 1-in-1. Run the sim and look at the modes of operation. And notice, we have a really intelligent simulation engine that can look at multiple price signals, right? Because this is a customer that has both a time of use rate where there is some time of use arbitrage opportunity, but we prioritize whatever is most lucrative. And in this case, it's not even close. We're way better off maximizing self-consumption. And again, those modes of operation there will directly correspond to how you can program these in your StorEdge. So let's look at what the visual looks like on this. This is a really fun one, I think, to unpack. Let me start in a winter month. Yeah, this is interesting, like right here, maybe these 3 days. So think about what's happening here. Let's just look at January 20th. We're coming into the day at a 15% state of charge. We're operating in maximized self-consumption mode. So we are charging the battery in order to prevent exports to grid. And we're doing exactly what we want to do. But at 1:45 p.m. on January 20th, we just hit 100% state of charge. And as we go later into the afternoon, what happens? We are exporting solar to grid. And that's a result of the fact that we simply don't have enough storage capacity here. We would either have to size down our solar system or size up our battery. And just kind of like looking at the summary view, now we're down to about 22%. Okay, so that's a huge improvement from 50%. And let's do this. Let's go in now, and this is kind of going back to Cameron's earlier point. We can absolutely independently say, hey, let's have 2 LG RESU10H batteries and and that's effectively about almost 20 kilowatt hours of capacity behind the one StorEdge. And this is actually, I think, very oftentimes the smart thing to do in Hawaii. Again, we run the fixed schedule of operations now based on that change in equipment. And let's go look again. Now you can see there's really not a lot of days. That looks like a day there where, check it out, even with 2 batteries behind, we have just a little bit of late afternoon export to grid. Again, now we hit 100% state of charge on 2. I bet you if I went to one of the summer months where you have a lot more solar production in the day, yeah, check that out. You're definitely seeing some more late afternoon export. So we got it down for the year all the way down to 2% now. In terms of how you determine about right sizing your solar and storage system, if it's really important for you to get to 0, well, you can do that and you can goal seek that. Likely what I think would be most viable is for you to size down your solar a bit here. So that's an example of self-consumption. It's the primary driver in Hawaii. It's the primary driver in Australia, which is a very strong residential storage market. And, we've been, predicting that this will very much come into play likely in California in a couple years when regulators define the net metering version 3.0 rules, where I think it's widely expected that exported energy to the grid, exported solar production to the grid in a NEM 3.0 world in California will be heavily penalized, and you'll just need to pair your storage system with your solar. Okay, I've got one more example. I know I'm talking a lot already, but this is a really interesting one. Stay with me. This one actually gets a little bit more wonky, but this is it's a brand new, important policy thing. So let me actually maybe start there. I've got a couple browser tabs queued up. So we've been publishing a lot on this topic of energy storage net metering. This has been a years-long kind of proceeding at the Public Utilities Commission with a lot of stakeholders to finalize the rules for what folks are kind of referring to as energy storage net metering. In a nutshell, what we're talking about here, excuse me, is giving storage the ability to export to grid. And in order to do that, you need to demonstrate that the battery charges 100% from solar. Basically, what this whole energy storage net metering is, and I actually just published a very recent one 2 weeks ago. This took me a week to write because there's a lot of pretty nuanced eligibility rules in order to qualify for this. But why this is so timely, and you can see this link right here, is the fact that SolarEdge is the first vendor to achieve certification for that new UL standard. So basically what that means is they are now legally eligible to do energy storage net metering today. So let me show you what that means. This is really interesting. So this case here is for my house. Okay, I'm in the SoCal Edison territory. Just to give context on the setup here, we're going to do a TOU-D 4 to 9. By the way, that's the default TOU rate. SCE is now defaulting folks onto, and we're gonna force them to the TOU-D prime, which I know everybody in SCE is familiar with that rate. It's also a very advantageous residential storage rate. Okay, so that's the setup. Let's go into step 5. We're gonna add an LG StorEdge. I'm gonna do it the way I've been doing it. We're just gonna kind of say, hey, we're going to require that we charge from PV only. We're going to output the optimal schedule. And this is the thing I want you to key in on here. During the summer and the on-peak window, this is the really lucrative high-priced energy window, the mode of operation that we are going to be operating in is discharge to minimize import. Okay, so remember that. And let's look at and unpack what that means. Okay, so let's just kind of jump into a few days. Actually, you know what, in January. Yeah, this is going to be a good example. So discharge to minimize import, really important for you to wrap your head around what that term means. It's actually pretty simple. Effectively, this is a good example here on the 31st of January. Okay, you can see the 4 to 9 window. That's that premium on-peak window for the TOU-D prime schedule. It's 36 cents per kilowatt hour energy. We're coming into that window at 100% state of charge. We're now going to be operating in discharge to minimize import mode. Effectively, what that means is you cannot export storage to grid. You can only discharge the battery to reduce customer load, to minimize import. And check out what happened on this day. And this is my house on January 31st. I simply did not have enough load in the 4 to 9 window to kind of be able to really cycle the battery. At the end of the period, I'm only down to a 50% state of charge. And again, it's driven by the fact that I simply don't have enough load there. So the battery is kind of frankly being constrained. It can't really do its full thing and capture this full opportunity. Now, effectively, what NEM paired storage means, and actually remember that number too, that's our savings value, 44. And stick with me, this is all gonna make sense in just a second. We literally just launched this yesterday. The timing here is coincidental. Tracy booked this webinar a month ago, but literally we just got word from CALSA yesterday that, that SolarEdge has achieved certification. So this effectively is NEM paired storage mode, where if SolarEdge demonstrates that they are charging entirely from solar, they can legally export to grid, and watch the difference it makes. It's meaningful. So we'll rerun the simulation and check it out, what just changed. We were again in discharge to minimize import node. Now we're in discharge at max power mode. Let's look at what that means. I think folks probably already have a sense. By the way, our savings just jumped up. We were at 44. We just, for everything else the same load profile, same solar system, same storage system, right? Simply by enabling kind of NEM paired storage mode and allowing exports to grid, we're simply saving a lot more money. The battery is just capturing more money, and it's obviously going to show a better economic return. So let's look at what that means. And you know what? I actually have a month picked out. This is really interesting right here. So again, my load data in late June, I was on vacation. You can just see from the 22nd to the 1st of July, I literally had no load. We were just gone. Okay, so if you can't if you were in discharge to minimize mode, minimize import mode, you literally for these 8 days, your battery is just, it can't do anything because there is no load for you to minimize. But now with this single change, check out what we're doing. We're discharging at max power, right? So here we are. We're doing what we were doing before. We're charging off peak. We're getting to 100% state of charge, and look at what happens when we get into that 4 o'clock hour. We're discharging at max power. We are fully cycling the battery, and notice it actually happens within about an hour. We're able to go from full to empty and effectively capture full value on that day. And really, we're repeating that over the 365-day period. And it's a lot to digest. This is really new. You know, Calsa's done an awesome job of publishing on this. We're going to host more webinars and write about this topic. I predict a year from now, all of the you know, solar and storage residential sales folks that are on the line and developers, you will know what this means really well, because it makes a meaningful difference, and it just frankly allows us to get more value from the storage system. So that was my last of my 3 case studies. Just a couple quick concluding thoughts from me. I know I'm already probably over my time, but again, just back to Tracy's point, I mean, I'm kind of getting in the weeds here with really wonky case studies. And these are, you know, but I think a lot of our audience are the folks that really like unpacking and getting to that level of granularity. Zooming back out, remember, ultimately, this integration is all about just providing a really quick and intuitive tool and workflow for our users to kind of go right to a finished proposal, and know that the simulation you're running is very indicative of how the LG coupled with the StorEdge is going to operate in the field. And you know, all the detailed kind of demand profile visualization views we're looking at, once you're confident to know that this is really representative of how it works, you know, for your sales team, they're building, going from new lead to finished proposal in a matter of minutes, and you can just have absolute confidence that it's accurate. So I better turn it over there, Tracy, and go to Q&A. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Adam. I know we are getting towards the top of the hour, but we do have a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to aim them kind of at all of our panelists. The first one is for you, Cameron. Does SolarEdge offer installer training for new equipment? And let me unmute you. There you go.
Yeah, certainly. We do have a robust training initiative. And so if you are a first-time SolarEdge user or first-time StorEdge user, we want to make your experience as best as possible, or as great as possible, I should say. So if it's the first time you're installing a storage system, reach out to your salesperson, your regional sales person. So we have regional sales managers all over the country. If you don't know who that is, contact our tech support and just go to our website. We can link you up with somebody, and then they'll probably start with giving you some online tutorials, so you kind of have a good base under you when we come out and do a visit. And then if we can, and things align, we can send out a field service engineer to help with the installation, basically the commissioning of your first system. So that's where most of the pitfalls lie, is commissioning your first system. Just because it's like, did we program the battery to talk to the inverter? Did we program the inverter to talk to the meter? Did we set our time of use profile? Are we doing that later online? Did we get the communications up and running? The hard wiring, the physical mechanical portions of the installation is super easy. So I stress, like, if you need help, just reach out and we're happy to help.
Thank you, Cameron. Lynn, I'm going to give this one to you. What are the steps to becoming a certified LG dealer and installer?
The first steps is to go to our RESU resource page or our partners portal. There's a simple online test that you can take, and once you score 100%, you are certified right away. And to prepare for that, we do weekly webinars every Thursday, 12 to 1, or you can go to our RESU resource page and reach out and request training for your team, a one-on-one time or an in-person training session, and we'll be sure to get you everything you need to go out there and make your jobs easier in selling the RESU product.
Thank you, Lynn. A lot of questions about the recording. We are going to be sending it out after this webinar to everybody that registered. That one comes up a lot. Cameron, I'm going to give this one to you. Are there any special considerations to take into account if one wants to install StorEdge on an existing PV system?
So if you have an existing PV, like let's say you have an existing SolarEdge system, that's relatively easy. So StorEdge inverter is a unique inverter, and so it has the storage connection unit. So what I would recommend is swapping the inverter. So upgrade your inverter to storage capability. And then since you're out there and you're already replacing the inverter and adding a battery, it makes a lot of sense to maybe upgrade the system and add some solar panels. That way, you know, when you're on that off-peak time, you can charge that battery. So you right-size the system based on the energy Toolbase model is the best way to do it. If you're using a third-party inverter, let's say it's an Enphase or an SMA or Fronius or whatever it may be, if you're using a third-party inverter, certainly we do allow AC coupling with our product, but you lose a lot of the benefits. So you lose off-grid, or excuse me, backup support. So if the grid goes down, you know, those inverters are connected to the main panel, they'll still go down, and then your only backup capability is going to be basically the capacity of the battery if there's no solar coupled to it. So at that point in time, I'd say maybe it's a good idea to upgrade your system. And, you know, as painful as that sounds, you know, putting some optimizers underneath those existing solar panels may be a good solution. You know, if those solar panels are 10 years old, they're probably experiencing some photo degradation, and you can actually capture more energy by adding DC optimization on the roof. So it may be a good opportunity for that. But in general, if it's a SolarEdge system, my answer is replace the inverter. If it's a non-SolarEdge system, as much as I would love to say SolarEdge is the way to do it, there's probably more elegant solutions out there.
Thank you, Cameron. We did have Cost of ETV, our energy Toolbase app, and our platform and integration. So this, to use this integration in our tool, it's $150 a month per user. And with that, it comes the unlimited proposal generation along with being able to use the SolarEdge integration. The more users you add, that cost does go down. And again, yeah, unlimited proposal creation. So unfortunately, we are getting a lot of questions, project-specific questions, and while I wish we could answer all of them, we are going to stop here. It's 3 o'clock at the top of the hour. We are going to get together as a group and try to get all these questions answered by the relative party. So stand by on those questions. We will answer them. I do want to, again, thank you all for joining on today's webinar, and thank you again to Cameron and Lynn for being on with us. If you do have any additional questions, please reach out to your account manager or myself. And if you aren't an Energy Toolbase user, you can sign up for a free trial on our site, which you will be able to model everything we showed you today and have full access to that SolarEdge integration. And to quickly add, we are going to be at InterSolar next month, so please stop by our booth if you can. We're 1523. Again, thanks Cameron, Lynn, and Adam for being on with us. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.